Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. I just first of all want to apologize for technical snafus today because, they happen. They happen, and what can I say? I got a lot going on today for you, and welcome to this. Of course, it is Robservations, episode number 310. My God, hold on just a moment here. Episode number 310, and I think you've been hearing all kinds of craziness happening. So let's start this again, shall we? Imagination connoisseurs, all of you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, welcome to the technically snafu-ridden episode 310 of the show about something. I'm your host, Meyer Burnett, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, your existential Mr. Rogers, who can't seem to catch a break. But anyway, I am here today with you on this Sunday, the beginning of course, the beginning of the Seahawks run at the playoffs. Hopefully, they will go all the way to the Super Bowl. Who knows? We don't know. I don't know. But I figured I'd start this show early. Boy, the beginning of the show is kind of like how the Patriots played last night and ended their season. But, I can't say that I didn't not love it. I didn't not love see Tom Brady being defeated, because if you're a Seahawks fan, you know what that's like. Anyway, let me tell you, today, boy, it didn't start that well. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening today and on this show. And first and foremost, as I asked everybody to do, is send me videos. Yes, indeed, send me videos. And I got one that apparently fell through the cracks. But this is from our friend, imagination connoisseur, Dieter Bastian, all the way from Deutschland. And he sends this, he sent it in honor of the 300th show, but allow me to play this for you now.
Deutschland. Greetings, Rob, and Merry Christmas. Dieter here, you know from where? Say it with me. From Deutschland. Congrats on show number 300. But your imagination connoisseurs will be expecting season 2 to get better, Like this one. Come on, Rob. Isn't it shiny? Yeah, it is. So, cheers, Rob, for show number 300. Goodbye from Deutschland.
Dieter, I would have expected better from you, but that's okay. I know you had to bring up Star Trek Discovery. There's not a problem with that. I want to first of all thank Dieter, and if I could ever get my technical issues straightened out, let me just say that I'm going to be playing, you want to send me fun videos, you want to send me anything that comes from your land, wherever you're at, I'd love to see them. It was great to see Dieter in person. Dieter's, of course, sent me things before from Deutschland, which I've enjoyed, and I encourage all of you imagination connoisseurs, no matter where you are in the world, if you can send me phone videos or something, say hello, show me something interesting, I think that would be very cool. Now, to that end, Daz Nuke from the UK, or is it Desney from the UK? His name's Darren. Darren is an imagination connoisseur, and he sent me some DMs to show me some stuff, and I'm going to share it with you. And he sent me this. He, of course, based on my Terry Gilliam show yesterday, sent me this image. Of course, he had Terry Gilliam sign his Blu-ray of 12 Monkeys, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, his signed Old Boy disc, which is pretty rad. And here is Darren. Actually, let me read what Darren has to say. He says, "Hey, Rob, I just thought I'd share a couple of things from the collection. This was from a screening of Thirst at the Curzon in London. Such a classic and long-live physical media." And then, of course, he also sent me this, which is pretty exciting. Here he is with... he said, "So I was really lucky in that Chris, Anthony, Joe, and company were all in Durham for 5 days to shoot for Infinity War and Endgame. Everyone involved were so generous with the fans, and the thing that came over was how much everyone involved in these movies loves them and loves the fans, and to me, that comes through on screen. I was blown away by it. Chris was a great guy, so happy to talk and take photos, and the memories they gave everyone here will last a lifetime. Then he sends this. This is his favorite cinema. And he says, lastly, for now, this is my favorite cinema. We have an IMAX at the Metro Center, which I use for the appropriate films. But for everything else, I go to the Tyneside Cinema in Newcastle. It has 4 screens and is really diverse, showing documentaries, world cinema, as well as showing older movies that get 4K releases, etc. I will do a video in the next few weeks, which I will send to the website. And here is, of course, another look at the cinema. Very exciting, and I have to tell you, Darren, thank you for sending these to me. As always, I really enjoy hearing from everybody. I love seeing, where do you see movies? What are your favorite comic stores? Hell, what's your favorite coffee house? What's your favorite restaurant? If you live somewhere where I don't, which is everywhere else in the world other than Los Angeles, seeing anything that you guys want to send me is absolutely fantastic, and I love it. Also, I would also like to point out that on our website, if you were here yesterday and you heard me read Willow Yang's letter about shipping and Raylo, and I think it went down in Robservations history as one of the more classic letters that I have read in the past, because, wow, I mean, it was full of great content, and of course, it was written to us by one of our favorites, Miss Willow Yang, our own molecular biologist, PhD candidate, who, remember, on the Burnettwork.net website, you can go read all of her letters on, of course, the Willow Talk section of the website, and we want to thank Willow for doing that and adding content to the website and just pretty much being Willow, and it's amazing that she writes what she writes. She's very prolific, and I thought her Star Trek letters were enough. How wrong I was to find out that, wow, when she read that, or when I read her letter on shipping and Raylo, it was pretty mind-blowing. And I'd also like to take time to announce a new column on the website. There is a new column on the website written by our own Ian Samuels, ladies and gentlemen, where Ian will be reviewing the Samuels Whoville. Yes. The Samuels Whoview. Ian Samuels is going to review all of the new episodes of Doctor Who. So you can check that out on the website, the Burnettwork.net website, which is very, very cool. And of course, Ian is a prolific letter writer to the Burnettwork, and we love what he has to say. And of course, I'm very excited to be sharing more imagination connoisseurs, more members of the Post-Geek Singularity, giving them a voice. They, of course, join our columnist, Ali State, who writes the Feminerd Gaze. So, very, very exciting. All cool goings on at the Burnettwork.net website. And again, I encourage everyone, whether you want to add your 3-word movie reviews, whether you want to add images to the Imagination Connoisseur Gallery, the Burnettwork.net website is literally increasing exponentially every day, much to the chagrin of the great Mike Bodden. I think he constructed it all, and he's built like it's a virulent plague in his life. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Not unlike the metal-eating virus that we saw on the 2nd season of Lost in Space. But anyway, pretty cool stuff. And hey, it just goes to show you how we here at the Burnettwork, and of course Robservations, are trying to build an incredible fan community of all kinds of like-minded individuals, despite the occasional technical snafu, like how this show started today, which I hope you don't hold it against me, because what can you do? Things happen, right? You can't let that get you down. Now, for many people who weren't keeping up with current events, the Collider channel that I was involved with made some big changes this week, and yesterday open warfare broke out amongst some friends of mine, good friends of mine, and great co-workers, obviously. But it really got me thinking. It got me thinking about, I grew up loving being a fan. I loved the fan community. I loved being a part of, because I just didn't have many friends that were fans. And growing up, I had a few. My good friend Shade Roop, of course, Walter and William Olson were friends of mine, and my friend Mike Schertz. There was like 4 of us, and we were all obsessed about many things, but Mike not so much, but he still loved movies, and we would daisy chain our VCRs and copy VHS tapes incessantly. But it's funny, now we live in this, well, as I've watched the rise of the internet over the last, basically, really since 1988. 1988 was the first time I ever got online. I've told the story before. My college roommate, John Parcan, when I was living in West LA and going to USC, set up a BBS board, BBS service, computer server, and again, it was green text, a green screen. That was it. And he had the ability to get 20 phone calls at once. 20 people could hook up at once. And he had a Star Trek BBS board. And I would sit there at nights when I wasn't doing homework or something, and I would just talk Star Trek with people. And it was fascinating. Like 20 anonymous people that I didn't know could link into our BBS board. And it was strange because I'm like, how did you guys even know it was here? And it was sort of a strange thing that occurred. And I loved it. I mean, it was a way to, even though it was sort of anonymous, but it was a way to share fandom and have the most geeky of all conversations. I mean, debating what warp speeds meant as opposed to hyperspace in Star Wars, the physics of different universes, and as, of course, over the last 30 years, the internet exploded, and now we have a myriad, a rainbow coalition of channels, everybody talking about their favorite things. I mean, you can find YouTube channels devoted to anything. And what has been really interesting is, of course, the rise of, I mean, people talk about toxic fans, whatever, however you want to call it. I mean, there's been everything from Gamergate, the rise of the fandom menace. There's been all kinds of let's just say differing opinions. And fandom, in my mind, has really, I wouldn't say it's degenerated, because what's really interesting to me is I find it fascinating now that a lot of the fan channels are delving into more of the business. I mean, a lot of what's going on with Rise of Skywalker, if you read or watch a lot of YouTube channels, there's a lot of people that are starting to delve into the actual business of and the stakes of movie making. Now, I find that fascinating because the making of movies was always something people were interested in, but it wasn't something that was at the forefront of fandom. Now, however, we're watching this shift where people are delving into, I mean, I've been on channels, obviously, for the last 5 years where we're looking at, we cover the business of filmmaking. And on a daily basis on the John Campea Show, John and I are looking into things like box office and how are films being positioned in Hollywood? How are they being made? Franchise properties have obviously become the cornerstone of studio filmmaking. The business of movies for the studios is really existing IPs or creating new IPs, but mostly exploiting existing IPs. And we've seen franchises come back. We've seen new franchises built, the MCU, of course, over the last 11 years, now 12 years. And it's been really interesting to watch fandom address all of this and sort of figure out where are we all going? Where is this going to be? And how are we as fans and people that love all this stuff going to move forward into the new year? And how are we going to move forward as sort of like a base? And I was thinking about it because this show, people have always said to me that I am that I'm a positive voice. I mean, that's what people have always said to me. Thank you for your even-keeled, positive voice. And I never thought of myself as, I mean, I've always been an optimistic person, but I don't have necessarily a positive agenda that I'm pushing. What I am trying to share is my excitement and enthusiasm about by fandom and all the things that we're getting. As I said, I've always said this. I said this on Collider Heroes, that we live in a world, an age of wonder, where there is so much greatness surrounding us in terms of entertainment, in terms of genre. I grew up, we'd get one perhaps genre show on television. I was excited. And for the most part, none of them were very good. I mean, I grew up getting, you get a show like Otherworld or Manimal or Automan or The Fantastic Journey, and these shows would last not even half a season and they would be gone. Even Battlestar Galactica, which was at the time one of the most expensive television shows, if not the most expensive television show. I'm talking about the original Battlestar Galactica, not the 2004 Ron Moore and David Icke reboot. But the original Galactica, it didn't last very long. I mean, was it 20 episodes or something? And then, of course, they brought it back as Galactica 1980 with flying motorcycles. And we saw how well that went. I mean, maybe Hal Needham looked at Galactica 1980 and said, you know what? I've got an idea. I'm going to go make Megaforce. And he made that in 1982. I mean, can you imagine if we had online fandom when movies like Megaforce came out, or back when we had the TV shows that I was getting? I mean, The Incredible Hulk ran more than one season. That was amazing. Of course, when I was a kid, we had the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman and things like that. But it's been really interesting seeing you hear about toxic fans, and I think what I've come to realize, and as I've watched, because I do watch a lot of various YouTubers, as you all know, and I think that what I would like to see, and it really struck me, I've talked about this before, when I was watching Andre's Midnight's Edge show about Dune, about the upcoming Dune. And I was like, uh-oh, what does he know? And what's going on? Because I like Andre, and I like the people over at Midnight's Edge. And it was a very positive piece. And he wrote this positive piece. He said, I've heard nothing but good things. I can't wait to see this movie. And it was like, wow, because I started watching Midnight's Edge because they matched my my boundless loathing of Star Trek Discovery. And yet, I really liked, and also the J.J. Abrams, the Bad Robot stewardship of Star Trek. And I liked the production value of their videos, which I thought were great. And I really enjoyed their stuff. But I didn't know those guys. And until one of the byproducts of doing, and I didn't know Mecca, she's part of Midnight's Edge. One of the I think byproducts of me doing these shows for the last year is I've met other YouTubers. I of course went on Jeremy's show on Geeks and Gamers, and I've been on Midnight's Edge podcasts, and it was nice. And I caught a lot of flack for it too, and it was really nice to hear to watch that Midnight's Edge video last week, where Andre was just expressing his excitement. And I'm like, oh, I was surprised. I was surprised to watch a video where to hear excitement. And I think that now that we've moved past Rise of Skywalker, and we're going to see where Lucasfilm is going to go, and it's going to be very interesting. But we had, I think, The Mandalorian ended on a high note. I think, in a way, all of this talk of the J.J. Abrams cut of Rise of Skywalker, changes that were made. I mean, these are not things that are unusual in terms of blockbuster filmmaking. But now I feel like we're on the downslope of Mount Doom. The Eagles are coming and rescuing us from the lava flows, and there is no scouring of the Shire. They cut that out. So we are now going to go back to the Shire of fandom. That's kind of how I see the dawning of 2020, and as we move into this new year, there's a lot to look forward to. I mean, I just finished the second season of Lost in Space, which I thought the first half was great, and the second half degenerated into, let's just throw up obstacles one after the other for our characters and not really advance the story. There's alien civilizations and robots, and rather than really delve into the backstory of all of this, it was just, let's just let's keep the peril cranked up to 10. But I still enjoyed ultimately the season. It's a slickly made show. I really like all the characters. I love all the actors that play the Robinsons, and I'm getting a little tired of Parker Posey. I mean, it's like somebody just put a bullet in her head. You know, I mean, maybe she's gone. I don't know. But I do think I look at the genre fare. I haven't even got to V Wars yet, and I'm a fan of Jonathan Mayberry's, and to know that there's a V Wars series, I'm like, oh my god. You know, and we've got The Witcher is on now, and we're getting season 2 of The Boys, and Star Trek Picard is dropping. I will be doing review shows of Star Trek Picard. I don't know if I'm going to do them live. I might just do Star Trek Picard discussions live. I think that would be interesting. I haven't figured out quite how I want to do that. On Twitter, I was kind of communicating a little bit with John Roca yesterday about maybe doing them together. I have no idea what the future holds, but I am going to do a Star Trek Picard show. But it was interesting because, you know, I was thinking about how far, and I think it was because I was thinking about Andre's video about Dune, and there are other guys that I've met through Midnight's Edge, like the Popcast guys, who do these incredible videos where they delve into genre history or they go into certain franchise histories that are great, you know, really well done, painstakingly researched. And there's a lot of YouTubers that I still watch that, like Jenik I talk about, who's a model painter. He paints Gundam models, and I find that sort of joyous, and I really dig where fandom seems to be going after all of the Star Wars and the Star Trek vitriol. But really, and I understand that all of it comes from, we're all fans. Like, we all have this baseline of that we loved this stuff. And it's difficult, and as I know, and I've talked about this a lot, it's difficult when, and I felt this with Star Trek. I mean, I have a room here full of countless, well, I guess you could count them, it would take you a long time, but countless books and media, all devoted to my favorite franchises, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or something. And it's frustrating when, over the years, there's been all kinds of stories that have not been presented on screen, but whether they're in novel form, whether they're in comic form, wherever you find those stories, even online gaming or video games themselves, when you see or experience or have heard tremendous stories, and then when the flagship, which is movies and television, when the flagship of these franchises let us down, it's perplexing, because you're like, well, wait a minute. There are all these great stories out there. Why did they not draw upon those things? And it's because, as I've said many times, there is a complete disconnect between what Hollywood is doing and all of the existing stories that are out there. When you get hired, when you're a writer and you join a staff, you're not being paid to say, hey, you know, I read this Star Wars comic and I want to go back and adapt that. That's not what you're paid for. You'd be laughed out of a writer's room. But what I think is frustrating is that there is all of this knowledge. There's Steve Sansweet's Star Wars Encyclopedia. You know, there's all kinds of reference books and things. And these franchises that have been around for a long time have all of this information that we as fans have internalized and wonder, well, all we really want are great stories. And there are great stories out there. Why isn't anyone making good on those? I was fascinated. Of course, the latter half of Discovery Season 2 was all about Control and Section 31. And a lot of that was taken, well, the ideas had to have been taken from David Mack, one of my favorite Star Trek novelists, wrote a Section 31 Star Trek novel called Control. Now, that predates Season 2 of Discovery by 2 years. And I don't know if they went and looked upon that, or the writing staff, one of the writing staff, Kirsten Beyer, is a friend of his, but I can't imagine, I don't know who decided to do that, but he gets no credit. And the fact that the storyline they chose to tell in the second season of Discovery was far inferior to, as a matter of fact, everything they've shown on of Section 31 and Star Trek Discovery has been. I mean, I would have done a better job portraying a secret organization if I was writing as a 7th grader. It's been really, really, look, here's my Section 31 membership card. And, hey, I've got an all-black lapel pin, my Delta shield, my chevron. Hey, it's black, which means I'm different than you. Like, it's so silly. Whereas Section 31 was basically portrayed by Bill Sadler, one dude, and you never knew anything about it, which made it much cooler than, oh, we've got a headquarters. But it is frustrating. I think we live in a time where the creators of many of these franchises seem to be off the rails. And not off the rails, almost wantonly off the rails, that they've just decided to be like, hey, I'm not going to do it that way. Or, in the case of Watchmen, and I was no fan of Damon Lindelof, to me, Watchmen was both really great and pretty bad TV. I mean, I liked the way it all started, but I thought that it ultimately was quite muddled. The storytelling was quite muddled, but it tricks you into believing that it's much better than it is. And that's not to say that there isn't a lot of great stuff. The 6th episode of Watchmen, where Angela Abar was being force-fed through the nostalgia drug her grandfather's memories, was one of the great episodes of TV that I've seen in years. But I think overall the story, it was very ambitious, and I can't believe anybody actually made a television sequel to a comic book as opposed to, say, the movie. It's pretty amazing that it got made, and I ultimately think that Watchmen, again, was both incredible television and also it really missed the mark. But rather than get angry about it, I walk away going, okay, that was worthwhile to watch. Am I going to hate on that? Look, I don't like the way Alan Moore has been treated as a creator of many of my favorite things. I really don't. His comics, the things that have been adapted, whether it was From Hell, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, V for Vendetta, and Watchmen, have been various degrees of quality. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, a movie where they're like, yeah, you know what? These literary characters in the comic book, no Americans know them, so we're just going to kind of jettison the idea, the whole thing that Alan Moore created, and we're going to make it more palatable to other audiences. I'm just like, and we saw how that turned out. I mean, basically, Stephen Norrington's relationship with Sean Connery forced Sean Connery, or made Sean Connery leave the business. It was just, look, the corporate decision-making that goes into these franchise properties does not serve the franchise. And I've talked about it a lot. And I think what it is that we really want, great stories well told, and the Burnett axiom, never put your universe before your characters or your stories. Those are the things that we want. And there is a way to move forward. And I am hoping that Fandom moves forward and I see it happening. Fandom is stepping up their game. I think there's a lot of sure negativity out there still. And yeah, it's clickbaity, but what I see Fandom as a whole educating themselves about the business. People are really starting to draw on different, whether it's commentary, they're going to more reputable news sites to get the information. I see people stepping up their game. I noticed that with the fall of Collider, and a lot of my compatriots from Collider are starting their own YouTube channels. So these YouTube channels are going to get busier. There's going to be a lot of new voices. There's going to be a lot of competition out there. And of course, for people that augment their income by doing this, and me being one of them, it's going to be really interesting to see how that all shakes out and who are going to be people that rise up above this, because how many voices can the fan world sustain? And it'll be interesting to see. I'm actually curious and excited. As I always say, the more voices in my mind, the better. And it's going to be interesting to see how we all move forward, because definitely 2019 was the era of many fan channels grabbing the hearts and minds of the rest of fandom out there. I mean, I'd like to say that, well, I've done a little bit of that. I've got my own little thing going. You know, I'm not gonna change up what I'm doing. The thing that I want to focus on, aside from being more technically adept and not making so many mistakes, is increasing this community and making the community more vocal to one another. You know, and I think that's what I want to focus on moving forward, is like when Dieter sent me video or Darren sends me pictures of his local theater or things that has happened when he met Chris Hemsworth. I like that. I mean, that's what conventions are. That's why people go to San Diego Comic-Con, is to meet like-minded individuals. And I think that that's what we should be doing. That's what this channel is all about. That's what the Burnettwork is. That's what Robservations is all about, to build more of a sense of community. And I love seeing you guys give me a face to put with the names. And I want to see more of that happening here. And I encourage people, look, you don't have to. And I'm not saying, I'm not putting pressure on you to do that. But I think that that's kind of what I am looking to do with the channel. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, yeah, sorry about, again, the technical snafus today. And to that end, you know, there was I did miss yesterday. I did miss, I hate when somebody sends in a super chat or something, and I miss that. But yesterday somebody sent me I can't believe I missed this. And let me find it here. They sent me a thing about Prince. Darth Poncho sent in a tip, and I didn't see it because I was getting off the show, but he said, "I'm so sad Prince is gone. I lost my virginity while listening to the Purple Rain soundtrack. Good times." Well, first of all, let me say, there is no better music to lose your virginity to than Prince. When I was in high school, 1999, what was great about 1999, it was a long album, and you always needed long albums because there was never enough time to get busy the way you wanted to get busy. It seemed like, as anyone knows from your younger days, especially guys, you know, it takes you about, you're making out with a girl, it takes you about 45 minutes before you even muster up the courage to try and go up her shirt. She's been waiting for you to do that the last 30 minutes, but hey. And then you have to learn how to undo a bra with one hand, and then you don't know if the clasp was in the front or the back. I mean, I tell you, but Purple Rain, that gets you through. You get to things like Darling Nikki. Come on. What is up with that? So, Darth Poncho, I want to thank you for tipping the channel. And I'm glad to know that you lost your virginity listening to Prince, because it doesn't get much better than that. Willow says, your Terry Gilliam talk yesterday reminded me of an op-ed I read about diversity in Canada. The last section is the most interesting to me. Oh, hang on. I did not get to this, but hang on, let me copy this, and I'm going to put this, I'll put this in the live chat here. Let's see. And this is a link. This is the link that Willow sent me. So there you go for that. Thank you, Willow. Shadowzak09 says, what do you think of Universal Studios just sold the rights back to Marvel and what it means for future MCU movies? Did they? Are you talking about the Hulk? I have not seen that. Hang on a second. Let me look. That would be on Deadline. Or maybe you're asking me, what if they did? Wow. Here's some breaking news. The Rise of Skywalker, ladies and gentlemen. The Rise of Skywalker, gentle beings, kind people of all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, genders, however you identify. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker elevates to 919 million global. It will soon become the Mouse's 7th release of 2019 to cross the 1 billion mark. The current split worldwide is 450.8 million domestic and 468 million at the international box office. The weekend was good for 50.5 million in 53 offshore markets and 84 million global when including domestic. Last week, Disney reported, as we've talked about before this week, a record estimated $11.12 billion global haul in 2019. Unbelievable. $13.5 billion when Fox titles are included. The studio today hit another milestone with its Frozen 2 becoming the highest-grossing animated film of all time at $1.325 billion, although The Lion King at $1.6 billion is higher. It officially falls under Disney's live-action umbrella. Interesting. Well, that's pretty amazing. So, well, look, I do not see Shadow Zach. I do not see anybody talking about the rights. So Universal has the rights to make Hulk movies, and I guess there's some other properties that fall under that umbrella. I'm not sure everything. I don't know if Namor was Namor. I think Namor is part of that as well. But what do you think of Universal Studios just sold the rights back to Marvel and what it means for the future MCU movies? Well, look, the more characters that the MCU gets back under their umbrella, and eventually they'll get them all. I think there will be a time in the future where Marvel will one day have Spider-Man back as well. That day might not be for a while, but I think one day it'll happen. Look, it means that we've heard rumors that the villain in Black Panther 2 is going to be Namor, which would be great, because in the comics he did flood Wakanda once. I would love to see Namor. I love Namor. I've always loved Namor, the Submariner, ever since I was a kid. He was like the most. I liked how he was. You didn't know whether he was a good guy or a bad guy, and he's really a mutant. So we'll see what happens with that. I think it can only be a good thing. I would love to see a standalone Hulk movie. I really would. I don't know if they'll ever do that, but I think, look, after seeing Thor Ragnarok, it would be really interesting to see a standalone Hulk movie. I think that could actually work. Mark Chure is here. Mark Chure says, my son and I got to meet the Smallville cast yesterday. If he sees this, special tickets to the great John... special thanks. If he sees this, special thanks to the great John Glover for making a tired 10-year-old smile. Now, for those of you who don't know, John Glover, part of the Luthor family in Smallville, John Glover does not get enough credit as an actor. Look at John Frankenheimer's 52 Pickup, or one of my favorite teen films of the 80s, Keith Gordon's adaptation of Robert Cormier's book, The Chocolate War. And if you guys haven't seen The Chocolate War, it is a fantastic, fantastic movie where John Glover plays, I guess, one of the head professor. He's at a Catholic school. You have to see The Chocolate War. Look it up. And of course, Keith Gordon, who starred in Back to School and who starred in Dressed to Kill, became a director. He was also in Jaws 2. He directed The Chocolate War. He became a director. He co-directed a film called Static in the early 80s, so check that out. Jonah Krause says, hey, Rob, just curious if you listened to either of the two Stanley Kubrick audio interviews on YouTube. Truly incredible. Love your work. Yes, I have. I think I've listened to just about every Stanley Kubrick interview that exists. Yes, I've listened to those. Those are great. I think one of them came from the I think so, came from the Toshin Archives book, actually, that I have right here. Let's see if I can get it out. So this is the Stanley Kubrick Archives that Toshin put out, and the first version of it came with a film strip, and it came with this interview from 1966. I'm a Toshin book fiend, by the way. These are some of the greatest things ever done, and this is pretty dope too. So, if you're a Star Wars fan, this is kind of a must-own book. But I don't know if that's the one you mean, but it's definitely cool. They are incredible. I mean, Stanley Kubrick was such a keen mind. I would have given anything to have met him. I mean, he's my favorite director, And I love listening to him speak. I love reading that book is incredible. Joseph is here. Joseph says, Rob, I'm getting into Star Wars Black Series 6-inch figures. Do you have any, and can you recommend a web shop with a vast offering of Black Series figures? If possible, a European web shop. Well, I have to tell you, I have resisted the urge. I'm strictly 6 scale. I used to collect all kinds of action figures, and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't. The Star Wars Black Series are amazing. I had every single original Star Wars figure, yes, including Yak Face, and they were all out of the package, but they're all in mint. I sold my entire original. I know people are like, the little figures, there's too many different kinds to collect. I mean, I think, I sold my Playmates figures. I know. I couldn't, as I moved through life and as I got older now, with one foot in my grave, I had to stop with anything that wasn't 12-inch, because that way, whether you're getting, I just like 12-inch figures. It's how I began my action figure life, my fandom as a kid, with 12-inch G.I. Joe figures. Those are my favorite, and then they, of course, led to Mego figures, the 8-inch figures, and then the Star Wars figures, 3 3/4 inch. But my love was always 12-inch figures, and I realized I just couldn't get into 6-inch figures, 12th scale figures. There's so many of them now, and I know that most action figure collectors have moved to that. I mean, there's a lot of great Hot Toys figures are so expensive, but for me, I get more bang for my buck. I own 4 12-inch figures, and none of them are 12th scale figures, and none of them are Star Wars. I can't do it. I can't do it. So I can't recommend anywhere. Look, I would say the places that I go, BigBadToyStore.com. I know they frequently have bundles. Entertainment Earth, things like that. Those are the places that I go normally to buy things. The only 12th scale figures I will buy are movie related 12th scale figures that aren't normal, like Mezco's line of the 112 figures. They put out a Diabolic from Danger Diabolic. I had to get that. They put out Alex from Clockwork Orange. That was the first. I think it's the first Alex figure that was official that they put out. And I did get the 2-pack, the Dawn of the Dead figures, and I'll buy their Warriors figures or something like that. But I just can't. I can't do it. I can't do more. I can't do more. Otherwise, I'll be forever stuck in that world, and I'll never get out, because it's endless. There's already so many cool 12th scale figures to buy that I just can't even, I don't even know. My God, what would happen? But anyway, I did want to read an interesting article that I found about fan culture. And it's an old article. And I was looking up, I was trying to figure out, okay, and now I can't find the article. But I did have this article to read, and I was looking forward to reading it for you. But it's an old Esquire it's an old article from Esquire magazine about fandom. And of course, now, for whatever reason, I cannot find it. Uh-oh. That's Tallulah, and I'm sure she probably wants to come back in, but you know what? I don't know. I can't let her in right now. I've had enough problems with this show. Well, anyway, perhaps I won't be finding that Esquire article, but it was basically an article from 2018 talking about toxic fandom, and it was sort of interesting, but it's old. I don't need to read it because it's an old article. So I got a few letters. I thought I'd throw them your way. Now, I've been asked this question before, but I'm going to read this letter. This letter comes from Troy Williams. Hey, Rob, I just watched the first 2 episodes of The Witcher, and I'm loving it. I am thankful that we live in an age where we get to see adaptations of works from different mediums, not only into movies, but into television shows as well. If I could choose one book to be adapted into a TV series, I would choose Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. The book is a retelling of the Greek myth of Cupid and Psyche, and in my opinion, Lewis's best work. If you know, it's funny, when I hear Cupid and Psyche, all that goes through my mind is Scritti Poliiti's 1985 album with would-be's on it. Pray like Aretha Franklin. I mean, that's, how old am I? If you could choose a book to be adapted into a series, which book would you like it to be? Well, I've answered this question before, but it's always worth revisiting. It was just a couple weeks ago I was talking about this. Greg Bear's novel Anvil of Stars. It's the second of a duology that began with The Forge of God. And I would actually, why not? Why not add The Forge of God? I would adapt The Forge of God and Anvil of Stars into a TV series. And I would spend the entire first season of that. I've rethought this since I talked about it last time. You adapt The Forge of God as the first season. And the first season ends with the destruction of Earth. And then, what a cliffhanger, right? And then the Anvil of Stars, you would expand the novel into 6 seasons of a show. So it'd be a 7-season show. That is my dream, Ray Kinsella. That is my dream. I would do that. That would be the thing that I would most want to do, and I definitely think it would be worth doing. But I'll tell you, I'm a huge fan of C.S. Lewis. Of course, Chronicles of Narnia, obviously, but I really like the Screw Tape Letters. And while I am not a Christian myself, Mere Christianity was something I highly recommend reading. But I've never read Till We Have Faces. And if it's a retelling of the Greek myth of Cupid and Psyche, that is right up my alley. So, by God, why not do that? What an interesting... I think that's really interesting. I got to look into that. Wow. That's pretty cool. Now, I would... you know what? I won't, because I want you guys to go to the website. Ian Samuels has, in fact, written his first reviews. And his column is up at the Burnettwork website, and here it is. So let me give you a link. And that is not the link that I wanted to give you. Apparently, I didn't get that link. But, yeah. Hold, please, and I will get you that link. I'm going to put it into the website. So this is where Ian Samuels' new column is about Doctor Who, if you are a Doctor Who fan. And I'm putting it into the live chat. So I hope you enjoy it. There we go. At least I hope that just went into the live chat. Maybe. I hope you dig that. John Hiroshi says, should I unfollow William Shatner on Twitter? No. Why would you do that? No. Yes, William Shatner has people obviously administering his social media presence, but no. Why would you unfollow the great William Shatner? That's terrible. Why would you even say that? Never do that. You should not. So I say, no. Do it. Read him now. Now, here's something else that Joseph actually asking about his collection. I'm going to put something else since Joseph was asking about figures. Here is, as you all know, we do have the Imagination Connoisseur Gallery, and Joseph has sent in photos of his action figure collection. And I'm putting that in the live chat too, so check that out. So, by the way, Joseph, thank you for you have quite the collection. No wonder you were asking about that. And this is really cool. I'm going to put this in the live chat as well, because this is just this is from Garen Gillam. And Garen Gillam is a Star Trek fanatic par excellence. And I'll put this in the live chat. He built a bridge out of paper, an Enterprise bridge out of paper. So check that out. It's pretty cool, which I think you will Love that. And oh boy. Yeah, Ian Samuels also made a poster of me as the Viceroy of Verisimilitude. And it's interesting because this picture that he used is me. I believe he took this when I hosted a conversation for the 25th anniversary of Star Trek with the entire cast of The Next Generation. So, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Now, this is a really interesting letter. So this letter comes from Jordan Williams. And for those of you who don't know, well, I'll just read this. Hi, Rob. Big fan here. I've been following you since your time on Collider Heroes, and congratulations on 300-plus episodes. Your episode of Robservations, where you discussed some of your favorite films of the decade and the recent success of Uncut Gems, got me thinking about independent films and the rise of one particular studio that has consistently produced some of my favorite films each year. In that episode, you mentioned A Most Violent Year and Under the Skin as two of your favorites of the 2010s, both distributed by A24, a New York-based independent film company which was founded in 2012. Since then, A24 has seemingly dominated the American independent film landscape with 25 Oscar nominations under their belt, including a Best Picture winner, and countless appearances on year-end top 10 lists. They've been responsible for some of the most provocative and profound films that champion the stories of underserved audiences and edgy genre storytelling. Titles from their already huge library of 80-plus films have redefined multiple genres in the last decade, whether it's coming-of-age dramas like Moonlight, Lady Bird, and mid-90s, or thought-provoking horror flicks like The Witch, Hereditary, and Midsommar. Their polarizing science fiction offerings like Ex Machina and the previously mentioned Under the Skin were unnerving to watch, yet engaged me more intellectually than any big-budget sci-fi epic released in the past 15 years. We've even seen the rise of our next Batman, Robert Pattinson, forego starring in typical mass blockbusters to instead work with auteurs like the Safdie brothers for Good Time, Claire Denis for High Life, and Robert Eggers for The Lighthouse. These films and countless others that they've released are what I consider to be some of the most interesting stories in modern American cinema. In the age of franchises and IPs, interconnected cinematic universes, and Imperial Disney, I love that Imperial Disney is becoming a thing. A24's vast portfolio is a reminder that there are still dozens of boundary-pushing artistic films released every year. For me, they have been the definitive voice in filmmaking over the last decade, and honestly, they're just cooler than everyone else. I'd love to hear your thoughts on A24 and some of your favorite films that they've released. Do you think we've seen a run like this from another indie film studio? And in your opinion, what other film studios have defined their respective eras? Thanks for sharing and keep up the great work. That comes from Jordan Williams. Jordan, what a great letter. Yes, A24 is, I think, an amazing studio. What Miramax was in the 90s and how Miramax really, the wave of, I sort of see Ground Zero as, look, we've always had a great independent cinema. I mean, you can go back, hell, Night of the Living Dead represented the pinnacle of independent horror cinema back in the late 60s, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and of course, and Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we've always had great indie cinema, the movies of people like John Cassavetes, but Miramax sort of, after Sex Lies and Videotape, Miramax was one of the great independent studios. And A24 has, I think, really, if you look at their output since 2012, have been incredible. They have a movie coming out called In Fabric, a horror film that I have yet to see. But I think their taste is impeccable. I don't know anybody at A24. I certainly would like to, but the films and the filmmakers they choose to have alliances with, and judging by Robert Eggers or the Ari Aster making Hereditary and Midsommar, they're doing what Warner Brothers used to do, which is start alliances with filmmakers and getting those movies made. Now, I don't know about the economics behind A24, but they certainly have incredible taste. And I look back at The Farewell is theirs. The Lighthouse is theirs. Waves is theirs. That's just this year. The Last Black Man in San Francisco is theirs. I mean, it's unbelievable. Gloria Bell is theirs. Skin is theirs. Under the Silver Lake, Native Son, Climax, mid-90s. I mean, their film, Eighth Grade, which was a terrific film. You go back and you look at their... I mean, I don't know who picks their films, but they have impeccable taste. Some of their movies that I've liked more than others. Man, The Disaster Artist was there. Killing of a Sacred Deer. The Florida Project. My God. I mean, The Black Coat's Daughter, which was produced by a friend of mine. I mean, The Monster. Same thing. Same producer. Adrian Biddle. The Lobster was there. Swiss Army Man. The Witch. Room. The End of the Tour. I mean, they have had such a run of terrific films. And with Ari Aster's movies, too, and The Witch, they're having success at the box office, which is terrific. I mean, this is why cinema, when people talk about, cinema, the death of cinema. No, we're getting just as many great movies as we've always got. It's just they're not coming from the major studios. The major studios' focus has moved over to more spectacular or they had to. By definition, they had to move towards spectacle filmmaking because they're spending so much more money. A24 is where we're getting the new visions, we're seeing the new filmmakers bust forth, and their taste is impeccable. You might not love all of their movies, but their films are adult and they're groundbreaking and they're interesting and they're the proving ground where the top tier talent that we're going to be watching for the next, I don't know, half century and beyond is where it's all coming from. So, Jordan, you're absolutely right. A24, it's kind of like I'll watch anything that A24 puts out. Honestly, I'll watch anything that the A24 puts out, which is they're incredible. They've had an incredible run, and I think that it's really terrific work. Wow, I'm gonna save this till tomorrow because I'm gonna put that on the the show tomorrow. And here, this next letter comes from Tyler Vickery. Hey, Rob, long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm thinking about my favorite movies in all genres. I've noticed a weird coincidence. When I look back at all of my favorite film franchises, it's always the case that the third film in the series is my favorite. Notice that I said my favorite, not necessarily the best. We'll start with Star Wars, as it's the most topical. In all three of the trilogies, the third is my favorite. Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, and Rise of Skywalker. All my favorites in their respective trilogies. A few other series that come to mind would be the Alien series. And I know it's a hot take, but Alien 3 is my favorite, and it is a criminally underrated Fincher film. With Lord of the Rings, it's Return of the King. Back to the Future. The third has been my favorite since I was a kid. Thinking back on Batman, my favorites are Batman Forever and The Dark Knight Rises. Wow. Just to skip around, a few more franchises where the third film in the series is my favorite. Off the top of my head, Hellraiser, The Exorcist, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Hobbit, Captain America, Austin Powers, Thor, John Wick, just to name a few. The third movie is often horribly reviewed and negatively looked at, as most franchises or trilogies have run out of creative steam by the time you get to the third movie. Look at the aforementioned Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. That movie is so hated, but if watched with an open mind, it's an absolute gem of 80s horror. I'm not sure why this is or what it says about me. Maybe it's some weird subconscious tick with the number 3, or maybe it just says I have bad or at least questionable taste in film. Are there any film franchises where the first isn't necessarily your favorite? Thanks, keep doing what you do. Well, the first one that comes to mind is the Mad Max films. I liked Mad Max, but The Road Warrior, or Mad Max 2 as it's known everywhere else in the world, is my favorite of the franchise. Although I gotta say, I do love Fury Road. And Mad Max 3 Beyond Thunderdome, or just Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, is also a movie that was underrated that I think has gotten better with time. But for the most part, I can't go with you on the third movie is my favorite, because it's usually a franchise was usually, to get to a third film, had to be groundbreaking enough that the original was usually pretty mind-blowing. Oh, by the way, I've got another franchise film, Dawn of the Dead. I like Romero's Dawn of the Dead more than I like Night of the Living Dead. So, and I might like Empire Strikes Back more than I like Star Wars. But I think what's interesting is you have to have the initial film to establish that film's worthiness of even having a sequel get made. It has to be worthy of a sequel first and foremost. But yeah, and I think that that's an interesting tick that you have. See, again, I've talked about how I could never like Return of the Jedi as much as I liked Star Wars, because Star Wars was so groundbreaking. And while I do think the version of Alien 3, not really the director's cut, but the Alien 3 assembly version that's been released on Blu-ray, that's part of the Alien anthology, is a much better film than the original version. I am a fan of Alien 3. I love Exorcist 3. Love Exorcist 3. I really do, but I don't think it's a better film than the original. It's interesting that you like The Hobbit 3 more. But Captain America Civil War, I think, arguably, Winter Soldier and Civil War, you could go back and forth. But I think that's interesting that you like that. I mean, Rocky 3 is a lot of fun. I think what's interesting maybe in your mind, that because these characters have already been solidified and you know who they are, that maybe that has something to do with why you love the third movie in the franchise. I don't know. But certainly that's an interesting take. And I appreciate that you sent that in. So, yeah. Jonah Kraus says, have you seen Jojo Rabbit? Finally saw it. Very admirable effort from Taika. Loved it. Well, I have not. I have not seen Jojo Rabbit yet. I'm dying to see it. I still haven't seen it. I've got to go with Elizabeth. With finishing up Tango Shalom, I just got so busy with that. But I'm going to see it. I know I'm terrible. I'm hanging my head, but I love Taika Waititi's films. I do love them, and I mean I feel bad that I didn't see Jojo Rabbit, and I did see the 8th episode of Mandalorian that he directed. But yes, I need to see Jojo Rabbit. Jet Screamer sent a $2 super chat and says, "Troopers who won't kill, are they Jedi like Finn?" You know, I don't know if they're Jedi like Finn. It was interesting. I like that. I like the idea that he was a Force user, but again, It should have been brought in from the very beginning, and I would have liked to have seen more of that happening. Who knows? They could be, but I don't know. I think that's an interesting take. I'd like to think that maybe that has something to do with it. I mean, I think it's very interesting, very, very interesting. We shall definitely see, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I don't really know. We shall see. Now, this comes from Ian Samuels, and I had to read this. Rob, the Post-Geek Singularity. Many have suggested that This Is Spinal Tap from 1984 was the first mock rockumentary. But Spinal Tap would not have happened. You know what? I did read this without the Ruddles. I'm going to read it anyway, because why not? Another band that is often forgotten, overlooked, and also wouldn't exist if it weren't for the Ruddles. Oh, I didn't even know this. Pardon me. Let me start this again, Ian, because you wrote about the Ruddles, but this is different. Many have suggested that This Is Spinal Tap from 1984 was the first mock rockumentary, but Spinal Tap would not have happened without the Ruddles. Another band, I didn't know this, that is often forgotten, overlooked, and wouldn't exist if it weren't for the Ruddles, is Britain's very own Bad News. Bad News is a heavy metal band created by Adrian Edmondson, half of the team that brought us Bottom with Rick Mayall. Their first appearance was on the Comic Strip Presents episode Bad News Tour in 1983. Alan Metcalf, known by his stage name of Vim Fuego, is lead singer and lead guitar. He is joined by guitarist Den Dennis, drummer Spider Webb, and quite possibly the world's worst bassist, Colin Gregson, who is only in the band as his cousin provides the band with their amp. Together, they are Bad News, And in the Bad News Tour, we follow the band on their first tour, and things do not go well, with their van breaking down, constant fights with the documentary film crew, until the band unceremoniously split. Bad News Tour is great fun as it takes the piss, not only of heavy metal wannabe bands, but also documentary filmmaking. It is often unfairly accused of being a ripoff of Spinal Tap, but it is just coincidental that two people on either side of the Atlantic had similar ideas at the same time. I've never heard of this. In 1998, we were blessed with Comic Strip Presents More Bad News, as the rock journalist from the first short film works to get the band back together for one big gig, and it doesn't get much bigger. It starts with the band's appearance on UK TV's Channel 4 program The Tube, hosted by ex-Squeeze keyboard player Jules Holland. After recording their single Warriors of Genghis Khan and making the video, they are booked to play at the Monsters of Rock world-famous event at Castle Donington. But before they can play, they have to get in, which is difficult, as the makers of the documentary have told the staff at Donington that the band is a joke. Eventually, they are allowed in, and after checking out the stage, they retire to their cheap hotel room, where they proceed to get drunk and trash the room in true rock and roll style. They fight with old band members' feuds coming back to haunt them. They are arrested and spend the night in jail before making it to the stage. Real footage of the band actually playing at Donington is intermixed with interviews with members of Def Leppard, Marillion, Ozzy Osbourne, and Motorhead's Lemmy, all explaining how shit Bad News are and how they don't deserve to be there. More Bad News is excellently put together, written and directed by Adrian Edmondson. Wow, dude, if you like Spinal Tap and have never seen Bad News, I highly recommend watching both the Bad News Tour and More Bad News. Well, Ian, I've never heard of this. I can't believe I've never heard of this. This is right up my alley. I need to read this. See, this is what I love learning from you imagination connoisseurs. I learn something new every day, and I love that. That is fantastic. So, I mean, thank you for that. More Bad News. I definitely need I need to read that or watch that. How do you get that? Can you get that? I'll have to look. We'll have to see if it's on video or not. This next one comes from prolific letter writer Dean Mikatich, and this is a pretty interesting letter. Hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. Seeing that Neo box behind your head, I wanted to talk to you about The Matrix. No, not the films, the comics, the video games, or even the Hot Toys, but the Animatrix. This collection of 9 short animations give us a better insight into the universe of The Matrix. They told us stories that were not connected or had small connections to the main story, but they gave a history of how the war with the machines started. The Animatrix also includes the excellent CGI film The Final Flight of the Osiris, which I loved. I love that, and I think that's the first film on the Animatrix collection, which leads us straight into The Matrix Reloaded. The Wachowskis only wrote 4 of the stories and did not direct any of them. Most of the project's technical side was overseen by notable figures from the world of Japanese animation. The English version also has some of the biggest voice actors at the time, such as Matt McKenzie, James Arnold Taylor, John DiMaggio, Tara Strong, Hedy Buress, and Dwight Schultz of the A-Team fame. Yet, when people talk about the Matrix franchise, this collection of stories is never mentioned, which is a great shame. I suspect you've seen these films, Rob, but for those in the Post-Geek Singularity that have not seen it, I highly recommend that they do. The Animatrix gives you a far better insight into the world the Wachowskis created. With news of a 4th Matrix film, I hope the Wachowskis do another set of the Animatrix. Kind regards, Dean. You know, I really like the Animatrix a lot. For those of you who don't know, when the Matrix sequels came out, they were really hyping the idea of transmedia properties, where you could do storytelling. The film would obviously be the proper, that would be the franchise proper, but they would also do things like have the Animatrix, where it would enrich your understanding of the movie by watching these animated shorts. They also had, I think it was called Enter the Matrix. It was a PlayStation 2 game. And that was also, by entering and playing that game, entering the world of the Matrix on PlayStation 2, you would get a better idea of the franchise. Now, did it work? I don't know. I would prefer, I mean, the idea of transmedia properties, I understand why that seems appealing. But again, I don't think that you should compromise the integrity of the films themselves. You need to solidify your property and allow the ancillary things. They can feed into the main property, but I think it's really important that movies stand on their own. And I think being a sequel, look, any great sequel, one of the great things about Romero's original, well, now it's more than a trilogy, but the original trilogy that Romero made from the late 60s through Day of the Dead in 85, you had Night, Dawn, and Day. And each one of those movies is a standalone film. Sure, it's all about the zombie apocalypse, the zombie outbreak, but none of those movies actually tie directly into the other. What you're doing is you're getting a different view of what's going on throughout the world with different characters, and they don't have necessarily any ties to the movie that came before other than the situation. And I really like that a lot. I thought that was a great way to examine, to deal with, you're telling very different stories within the same framework, which I really liked. Now, if you're making direct sequels, like Empire Strikes Back is a cliffhanger, so you have to go right into Return of the Jedi, of course, I like that as well, as long as they're tightly woven and conceived. I mean, Return of the King, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I should say. I know The Hobbit's now a trilogy, but it didn't start out as one. But the Lord of the Rings trilogy worked so well because the story was already figured out beforehand. So the filmmakers knew where they were going, which was obviously terrific. But the idea of transmedia properties where you have to, you don't really get the whole story unless you play the video game, watch the movie, watch the Animatrix. I don't necessarily like that idea. Only because not everybody plays video games and not everybody likes animation necessarily. And I do think they did a pretty good job of allowing the Matrix sequels to stand on their own. I don't know. I mean, maybe if we saw something, I understand the idea. The whole idea behind transmedia is to make more money. We sell more. We immediately, rather than have one product to sell, you've got 10 products to sell, and they're all supposed to feed in and give you this much bigger product. I don't necessarily think that's going to work. We're not built that way. When we sit down and watch a movie, we want the movie to be fulfilling. We want stories to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, unless you're watching an episodic TV series in which you know that that's the case. So I don't know if we're built that way. I don't know if that's a good thing. Maybe it is. It's hard to say. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the time, it was innovative and sort of interesting. But again, the video game was sort of buggy, and the different Animatrix shorts were also very different, and some were better than others. So I don't know if it all worked out the way they wanted it to work out. But I mean, I don't necessarily think, maybe in the future somebody will be able to do it really, really well. I mean, they're trying to do it with the Star Wars franchise. Well, you have to read the books. And the Star Trek franchise has, well, you've got the Countdown comics. And I just think to myself, when I read these things, I'm like, why couldn't we have seen this? Why I would like to have seen what happened, how the First Order was created. Tell us more. Just show it to us. I mean, do we have to? Why can't we get these things from the get-go? I don't know. Stephen Goggin writes in and says, "Dear Rob and listeners, my two favorite books are James Joyce Ulysses and Robert Anton Wilson's Schrodinger's Cat trilogy. I love everything about Ulysses, most especially the Ulysses audiobooks. I think if you wish for a good experience of Ulysses, the audiobook is the way to go, as I believe Ulysses was written to be read aloud. I also enjoyed the film versions of Ulysses, the first 1967 version of Ulysses, starring Milo O'Shea, who also played Dr. Duran in Barbarella, whose character Leo Bloom is clearly giving a Vulcan salute in the film. I also enjoyed the 2003 film starring Stephen Ray and Angela Ball from Alan Parker's The Commitments, and Patrick Bergin. Much of Joyce for me, is nonlinear storytelling in the same way Christopher tells stories. I enjoy nonlinear storytelling. When I read Robert Anton Wilson's Schrodinger's Cat trilogy, which is a fantastic book with lots to laugh at throughout the book, Wilson mentions Ulysses quite a bit. And if memory serves me correctly, Wilson poses the question more than once. There should be a science fiction version of Ulysses. To answer this, I feel there is a science fiction version of Ulysses, and that would be Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you would view Homer's poem, The Odyssey, and Joyce's Ulysses, and Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey as reimagined spin-offs of the original poem, you can see the influence that this ancient poem has had on our modern storytelling. Though I have not seen Troy, maybe I should. You know what? Troy's worth watching. It's fun. I have two other questions. Has any of Robert Anton Wilson's work been made into either TV shows or films? And secondly, how did Mel Brooks get to name Gene Wilder's character and the producers Leo Bloom? Did he see his name? Did he name him as a reference to James Joyce's book, or was it something independent of that? Well, Stephen, I don't even know what to tell you. This letter is a little above my pay grade. I have read James Joyce's Ulysses, and I've read the Schrodinger's Cat trilogy. You know, Robert Anton Wilson was big when I was in junior high and high school, and finding out about the Illuminati and things like that was all part of that. But this is a very interesting letter. I never really thought about that. Ulysses and 2001 as spin-offs of Homer's epic poem. Wow. These are all questions that I must ponder. I throw that out to the imagination connoisseur community, and I'm going to have to look up this. I'm going to have to do some more research into this. Leo Bloom. Really interesting. I would imagine maybe so, because Ulysses, it's not like Mel Brooks was an uneducated man. So we will definitely see where that is coming from. I mean, what a great letter. This is exactly the kind of letter I love hearing come from the imagination connoisseur community, because there are things I never thought about. Jason S. says, I like using Netflix DVD so I can rent DVDs and Blu-rays of pretty much any TV show or movie that has been released physically. As many of them I rent aren't that great, and I don't think I'd spend $5 to rent it digitally if Netflix DVD wasn't around. Well, Jason, that's interesting. I didn't even know that you could still get Netflix DVDs and Blu-rays. I guess I thought you couldn't, but I guess you can. That's pretty amazing. I love that. That, you know, and $5, why not? If you can spend less money, why shouldn't you do that? I think that is a fine choice. But yeah, I didn't I didn't even know that. You know, to be honest, I never once rented a disc from Netflix. I never did. And I probably should have, but I didn't. And that is perhaps it is a failing of mine that I didn't anticipate. That was a failing of mine, but now that you mentioned, if you're still renting things, maybe I should have gone back and done that. But I never had the singular joy of having to put something back in one of those Netflix envelopes that I had rented. Shame on me. But now I've got something I want to show you guys that I think you will find really interesting. I thought this was, I did find this to be quite amusing. And again, it's something else that I think is fun when I hear from you imagination connoisseurs who are coming up with a lot of fun stuff. Now, this I have to say I love this. This comes from imagination connoisseur Aaron Frey. And he claims to be the illustrator to the stars. And he's put his talent to work creating this picture of, well, me. I'm Rob as verisimilitude, and I have to say, I love this idea. You know, I never knew that Robservations needed a mascot, but we have one now, Verisimilitude. And I love this. I think this is great. I want to see comic books. I want to see everybody's take on our new character, Verisimilitude. She's obviously a badass. I'd like to believe that Verisimilitude came to prominence in the 60s and the 70s, and she's still here today, holding us to reality. And I love this. I want to say, Aaron, thank you for creating this great character. I love Verisimilitude. How can you not love Verisimilitude? I mean, it's amazing. And once again, if you imagination connoisseurs have other things to share with me, assuming I can keep the show broadcasting correctly, I will do just that. And I want to thank you for sending that to me. That is absolutely fantastic. Verisimilitude, our patron saint. Bunyan Snipe says Ulysses 31 is like the Greek myth mixed with Star Crash. Oh my God. Well, Bunyan, I've got to get on that. Ulysses 31, I need to see that absolutely, because I've never seen that. I don't know that, so I must check that out, which is fantastic. So many thanks for letting me know about that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to the end of this episode of Robservations. Robservations, episode number 310. And I'm signing off because I'm going to go watch the Seahawks-Eagles football game. And I want to thank everybody for joining me here. And I want to thank my moderators, the great Mayor Mike Bodden, Greg Smith, Detective Jim, Jordy Lyons, Lewis Yu. I want to thank you all for being here and making this community the best community on YouTube. Now, I'm sorry about my technical snafus at the beginning of this chat. I will get better as I go along, I promise. Now, moving forward, I encourage everybody to go to the Burnettwork.net website, check things out, send me videos, send me pictures. I seem to be able to play those okay, but so I promise to be better. And tomorrow, of course, I'm back on the John Campea show, and I will be back here in the afternoon, either at 1 or 2. And once again, I appreciate all of your support, and I love doing this show for you guys and girls and gentle beings and people of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds throughout the universe in perpetuity. So thank you very much. And remember, as I always say, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I will say, as I always say, if I can get to it, because I can't get to it right now because I'm looking for my button to actually stop streaming, which I'm not. I don't see it. So I'm just going to hit talk, and I guess I'll just do this until I find where it is I need to be. Can you put up with that for me for a minute? I can't say that. Oh, wait. Hey, you know what? I'm not going to sign off right now. I found this article that I was going to read. And maybe I'll read. Maybe I shouldn't read it. I don't know. Should I? Perhaps not. I think I said all I wanted to say. And I don't want to open up a kettle of worms by doing this, because if I do, I think that would be bad. So I'm just going to end this chat, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all for being here. And as I always say, have a better day.